Okay, welcome to the deep dive. This is
Hi.
where we take your sources, the articles, the research papers, the notes you've pulled together, and really dig in.
Yep.
Our goal, to pull out the most important bits, the aha moments and the practical stuff that's specifically relevant to you and the material you sent over.
Think of us as guides, helping cut through all the noise.
Exactly. And today, we're tackling a topic from your stack of sources, one that, well, it touches on feeling your best in so many ways. Naturally improving testosterone levels.
hmm
The mission you've basically set for us in this deep dive is to go through this material and pinpoint the most critical science-backed practical habits. Get rid of the gimmicks.
That's right. Based purely on the sources provided, we're zeroing in on those foundational evidence-based strategies, just what the material says about supporting healthy testosterone, naturally.
And digging into this material, it's really clear why this is such a hot topic. The sources you shared really stress that testosterone isn't just about muscle or libido, though obviously that's part of it.
Right. It goes way beyond that.
Yeah, it seriously influences things like energy levels, your mood, even mental clarity, focus,
Yeah.
overall vitality. The sources suggest that when levels aren't optimal, it really can drag you down day to day.
Absolutely. And a really key point the material brings up is that this isn't just an older person's issue anymore.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That surprised me a bit, actually.
Yeah, it highlights that younger people, too, are seeing suboptimal levels more often.
Yeah.
And it links it back to, modern life stuff.
Like what specifically?
Well, the sources point directly to things like chronic stress, really poor sleep quality, diets that are heavy in processed foods, and just, sedentary lifestyles. All super common today, unfortunately.
So much more relevant across the board than maybe we used to think. Okay, let's unpack this stack of sources you've given us. We can break down the core insights into the main pillars the material seems to focus on,
Sounds good.
starting with lifestyle, then moving into nutrition, exercise, and wrapping up with a huge role of sleep.
Solid plan. Let's build it from the ground up.
Perfect. So right off the bat, the sources you provided really hammer home that lifestyle habits are like fundamental, a starting point. And what did they flag as maybe the single biggest blocker?
Stress. Yeah. Specifically, chronic stress. The material makes a very, very clear case for this being a primary testosterone killer, as they put it.
Okay, a killer, that's strong language. How did the sources explain that link? What's the mechanism they talked about?
Well, it's fascinatingly direct, actually. Constant, unmanaged stress basically tells your body to pump out cortisol, the stress hormone.
Fight or flight stuff.
Exactly. And while cortisol is vital for short bursts, the sources indicate that when it's chronically high, like all the time, it directly suppresses testosterone production.
Okay.
It's almost like the body says, okay, deal with this threat first. Forget about building muscle or optimizing hormones right now.
So it's not just a vague stress is bad thing. There's a real hormonal trade-off described in this research. Managing stress isn't just for your head. It's actually like a direct hormone intervention.
Precisely. Good for your mind, good for your hormones.
So what practical, specific ways to lower stress did the sources actually recommend?
They focused on accessible, like daily habits. Things like getting in daily walks. They specifically mentioned walks in nature, if possible, even short ones.
How short?
Like even just 5 or 10 minutes of deep breathing or meditation was cited as effective. Simple stuff. Also limiting screen time, especially near bed, which, ties into sleep later.
Right, right. I also saw they mentioned social connection. That felt a bit different from just, physical health tips. How did they frame that connection?
Yeah, they were pretty explicit about that. The sources stated that building and keeping positive social connections can actually help lower cortisol levels and boost your mood.
Huh, interesting.
Which, creates a better internal environment for your hormones to regulate properly. It really underlines that it's not just biochemical stuff, but our emotional and social health matters too.
That's a really crucial insight from this material, that our relationships can literally impact our hormones.
Wow. And speaking of lifestyle, they also brought up something almost old-fashioned, but they said it was powerful: sunlight.
Oh, yeah. Getting natural sunlight, maybe 15 to 30 minutes a day, was described as really underrated.
And the link there is?
Vitamin D. The sources state that sunlight helps boost vitamin D levels, and vitamin D has a direct link to healthy testosterone production. So it's simple, it's free, and according to this material, it offers a real physiological boost.
Okay, so summing up this lifestyle piece from the sources, it's basically about creating an environment where your body isn't constantly freaking out in fight or flight mode,
Mm.
and it has the right basic inputs like vitamin D and good social vibes.
Exactly. Setting the stage, making sure the foundation is solid.
Okay, makes sense. Let's shift gears then. From how we live to what we, well, put in our bodies,
Yeah.
nutrition, the sources you gave us really zoned in on the impact of food on hormones. They definitely did.
Ah,
A major point was the critical role of healthy fats. The material explained that dietary fat is like a necessary building block for making hormones in the first place, including testosterone.
so you actually need fat to make it.
Right. Can't produce hormones effectively if you don't eat enough of the right kinds of fats.
And they were specific about right kinds, weren't they? Not just any fat.
Exactly. The sources specifically listed things like olive oil, avocados, eggs, fatty fish like salmon and nuts.
Huh.
Those were called out as excellent sources to prioritize. It's about the quality of the fat.
Got it. Beyond fats, the material also flagged specific micronutrients. Which ones did they really single out as important?
Zinc and magnesium. They came up again and again as being critically important.
Okay.
The sources presented them as like vital cofactors in tons of processes in the body, including the ones that make testosterone. Think of them as essential support crew for your hormone factories.
That's a good analogy. And they gave food sources too, which is super helpful, right, for making it practical.
Absolutely. For zinc, the sources listed oysters, classic 1 beef, pumpkin seeds, and lentils.
Mm.
And for magnesium, things like spinach, almonds, even dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate, nice.
Yeah. So adding these foods into your diet, according to the sources, is a direct way to support those hormone pathways.
Okay, but if those are crucial in, what about things that might get in the way? Stuff to limit. The sources were pretty clear on that too, right?
Oh, yeah. They definitely highlighted the negative impact of, well, excess sugar and all those ultra-processed foods.
How do they describe the effect there?
They explain that those foods often cause these big, rapid spikes in blood sugar and then insulin. And the material indicated that chronically high insulin levels can basically tank your testosterone over time.
Tank it. Okay. So another direct hormonal conflict described in the research.
Exactly. It's that seesaw effect again.
So it's not just calories, but the kind of calories and how they mess with your hormonal system. And they also mentioned alcohol, moderation.
Yep. The sources explicitly said that drinking too much alcohol can wreak havoc, their words, on hormone balance. So moderation was advised as a key strategy within that nutrition piece. Minimize the bad inputs, maximize the good ones.
Okay. Supportive lifestyle, check. Fueling right, check. Next up, the sources put a lot of weight on movement, exercise.
Yeah, this comes up consistently in the literature, and your sources really reinforce it. Regular exercise is presented as one of the most effective natural boosters, hands down.
Why is that? What's the signal it sends?
Well, physical activity signals to the body that it needs to maintain muscle, maintain strength, processes that are highly dependent on testosterone.
And they distinguish between types of exercise, right? What did they say works particularly well?
Resistance training, lifting weights. That was presented as like exceptionally impactful.
Okay.
The sources cited research showing that lifting weights 3-4 times a week significantly increases testosterone levels. They even got specific about focusing on compound lifts.
Ah, the big ones.
Yeah, like squats, deadlifts, bench presses, exercises that hit multiple big muscle groups at once. They seem to trigger a stronger hormonal response, according to the material.
And what about HIIT, high-intensity interval training? Those short, intense bursts.
Right. HIIT was described as providing a nice temporary spike in testosterone. So you've got resistance training for maybe a more sustained foundational boost and HIIT for those shorter-term effects. Both valuable based on this material.
Now, here's where it gets interesting, a bit nuanced. I think this was a really important point from the sources. They included a big but, a caveat about too much exercise.
Yes, absolutely vital. The sources explicitly warned that excessive endurance training, we're talking chronic long-distance running or cycling,
Right.
without enough recovery, that can actually lower testosterone levels.
Really? Lord.
Yeah. It seems like too much chronic cardio can act as a major stressor, kind of circling back to that cortisol point we discussed earlier. It works against optimal hormone balance.
Wow. That's a huge distinction. More isn't always better. It's about the right kind and the right amount, finding that balance based on your goals and how your body feels.
Precisely. Balance is key.
Okay, so we've built this picture. Lifestyle, nutrition, exercise. The final piece of the puzzle in your source material. They called it potentially the most underrated testosterone booster out there.
Sleep. Yeah. And the evidence presented in the sources for the impact of sleep quality and duration is pretty compelling.
It really was. I saw the material reference study saying that getting 7 to 9 hours of high-quality sleep per night, it can lead to a pretty substantial increase in testosterone, like 15% to 30%.
That's huge.
It's a massive return for just prioritizing rest.
Well, yeah, if you connect it back to the bigger picture, sleep is when your body does most of its recovery, its repair work, and regulates hormones. So when you're sleep deprived, it's a major stressor on the whole system.
Right.
It increases cortisol again, and it just disrupts all those crucial processes you need for testosterone production.
So bad sleep doesn't just make you tired and grumpy, it's actively working against your hormonal balance. Okay. And the sources offered practical sleep tips too, right? Things you can actually do.
Yes, straightforward, actionable stuff, like avoiding screens for at least 30 to 60 minutes before bed. You know, the blue light interference?
Yeah, classic advice, but seems important here.
Totally. Keeping your bedroom cool and dark, mentioned, is fundamental for a good sleep environment.
And sticking to a consistent sleep schedule, even on weekends, that was highlighted too.
Yes, crucial for regulating your body's natural clock, that circadian rhythm. And they even looped back to nutrition slightly.
Oh yeah, how so?
Suggesting that if you struggle to fall asleep, maybe trying a magnesium supplement before bed might help. Again, linking back to that micronutrients importance we talked about earlier.
It really does drive home how interconnected all these pieces are, doesn't it? Sleep isn't just separate. It influences and is influenced by stress, maybe diet, your ability to recover from exercise.
Absolutely. It's a whole system. You tweak one part, and it often ripples through the others.
So, okay, let's step back. Looking at all the sources you provided for this deep dive, the core message feels incredibly, well, practical and empowering, actually. It's presented as totally doable to support healthy testosterone naturally, not through quick fixes or magic pills, but by consistently focusing on these 4 key areas: managing stress, dialing in nutrition, doing the right kinds of training, and prioritizing good sleep.
Yeah, the material strongly reinforces that idea. No magic pill, needed just consistent, healthy habits. It's a pretty powerful message about just getting the fundamentals right.
And maybe the most compelling part, what lifts this beyond just focusing on one hormone number, is the emphasis in the sources on the broader benefits.
Totally agree.
They highlight that adopting these habits won't just potentially improve testosterone, they'll almost certainly benefit your overall energy, your mood, your focus, and likely add up to better long-term health and longevity. It's holistic. The rewards are across the board.
And what's really fascinating to think about is how these pillars, sleep, stress, diet, exercise, they aren't just separate tasks on a to-do list.
Right.
As the sources kind of implicitly show through the mechanisms they talk about, cortisol, insulin, vitamin D, recovery, they all influence and reinforce each other. It's a web.
Yeah, that's a great point, thinking about that. If you seriously improve just one area, say you finally nail down consistent, high-quality sleep, how might that make it easier to, I don't know, stick to a healthy diet, or manage daily stress better, or even have more energy for workouts?
Exactly. And conversely, think about neglecting one area. Like, if you let chronic stress run wild, how might that sabotage your efforts in all the other areas? Maybe you stress eat, maybe you can't sleep, maybe you have no energy to exercise. It could trap you in a negative cycle.
So the provocative thought then from this material for you, the listener, to chew on is, how can you leverage this interconnectedness? Instead of seeing these 4 pillars as separate chores, maybe view them as a synergistic system.
Yeah, how they work together.
Exactly. Which area feels like the easiest win right now? The most accessible place to start making an improvement? And how might focusing on that one step create some positive momentum, maybe making the other crucial areas feel a bit less daunting, a bit easier to tackle, building that positive feedback loop for your energy, mood, and overall well-being, like from the ground up?
It really comes down to building resilience, building vitality through integrated, consistent effort across these really fundamental areas of health.
Absolutely. A really, really valuable deep dive based on the sources you shared. Thanks for exploring this with us.
My pleasure.
We hope these insights pulled from your material are immediately useful for you. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.